Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to talk about our top tips for new teachers in the teaching field. My name's Terrell, and I'm here with
Patrice.
Hey, Patrice. How you doing?
You know how I'm doing.
Okay, so guys, today we're going to talk about our top tips for teachers. Me and Patrice, she's been teaching for like 20 years. I've been in the classroom for I think about 9. And over that time,
I've not been teaching for 20 years.
You look like
You
over
messy.
that time, we've learned a lot of things from our first day in the classroom to now, and we want to share some of this knowledge with our new teachers coming into the teaching field this year, or some people who taught last year and had a really rough year and kind of need some advice to start their year right. So, I'm going to get right into it. The first tip I have, and this starts from day one, is classroom management. From the first day you walk into that class, you try to control the situation. You can't control everything. You got to remember these are kids. They're not going to conform the first day, but you got to be consistent. You got to try to keep yourself on task and try to keep them on task and realize it's not always going to work out, but you keep working every day to make it better. What would you have to say with that?
I totally agree with you. Classroom management is the most important part of teaching because you want your lessons to get taught. So classroom management, definitely going in. Make sure you have an idea of what you want your rules to be. You can also have your students help you with those rules as far as saying, what do you think our rules should be? How will you learn best in the classroom? But you want to come in there with rules. You want to come in there with whatever consequences will be, issued. You want to make sure that you have that in order to have a productive class.
So one of the things I'm going to add with that, have your classroom rules posted, somewhere in the class that you can refer to. And what I do, especially at the beginning of the school year, before I start a lesson, we go over the classroom rules. Even if, we move from one subject to the next subject, I go over it again. I want to keep drilling it into their heads, and I want to keep drilling in the expectation of when you're in the classroom. So Patrice, what's the tip you would like to share?
So this is important because if you're a first year teacher, you're already thinking, especially if you're about to go into the classroom and you're already thinking, I'm going to have all this space. How do I want my class to look? Now, you don't want to fall down the rabbit hole of just buying any and everything because there's so many teachers that I see, they have buckets and buckets of class decor. You don't want to really do that. So I would say check out your thrift stores, come up with whatever plan you want your class to look like, but check out your thrift stores. There's a lot of different decor that you could use and you could save you some money while doing it.
So I just want to add, if you guys want me to do a video of me going to the thrift store and doing a shop for the classroom, I'll comment down below. I love going to Goodwill.
Good.
All right, so my next tip is don't take on extra responsibilities. When you're a new teacher, they're going to prey on you. All those things, it's true. All those things that people in the school don't want to do, they're going to come and they're going to push it on you. So now, not only do you have a new classroom, you have to come up with the curriculum, you have to grade. Now you got lesson plans. We all know how much time lesson plans take. Now you're taking on a responsibility. Maybe they want you to be the head of a club. Maybe be a coach of a sport or something. I would say your first year, just concentrate on getting everything together to make sure your second year isn't like your first year.
Okay. I agree with that. Because the first year, really, I think it's the most stressful because you're not going to know what students you're getting in your class. You're not going to know any of the students. You're not going to know who you're working with because you're brand new to teaching. And so you don't want to take on too much. You got to remember, you're going to probably be observed multiple times during your first year. Our district provides mentors for you for that first year. I'm not sure if every district provides that, but you kind of, you can get a feel of how everything is from your mentor. but you definitely want to make sure everything else that you need, like your observations, your lesson plans. For us, like even if you're getting in new, just know that all students are different. And so you don't want to take on too much because you're going to be learning about IEPs. If you don't have a background, or if you didn't really learn much about special education, you're going to have students in your class who have IEPs. And so that you need to focus that first year on really learning what it is that you're doing. It's a lot different than in the classroom.
I agree. So what would your next tip be?
My next tip is going to be forgiving.
Every day's a new day?
Every day is a new day. You have to look at it as every day is a new day. That's not just for your students, but also your coworkers. You know, sometimes you just learn how to deal with people a certain way. But as far as the students, it's most important for your students for you to be forgiving and for you to give them a fair shot the next day. They're not going to do things that you like all the time. And believe me, there are going to be students that you just don't like. They should never know that, though.
And there's going to be students that just don't like you, maybe because they have a chip on the shoulder and they think the world's against them. They don't even come on your radar, but you're on theirs. So keep that in mind. Just because somebody doesn't like you and they're trying to make your life horrible, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, what could be going on in their life.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I would say every day's a new day.
And be forgiving.
Be forgiven.
You have to. And like he says, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes in their own personal lives. You have no idea. You only know what's in front of you. But definitely be forgiving. Have a drawer full of snacks, because you never know when you have students who are hungry. Like, you just don't know.
So, and I can say this, whatever you think your bad day is, a couple years ago, I had kids throwing feces at me. Do you know how hard it is to come in and be forgiven and have a smile on your face? But I still did it.
Yeah.
I was a little salty, but I still came in and I realized, hey, it is what it is.
Yes.
So my next tip would be to find your teacher voice. And when I say teacher voice, it's the voice that you can use to command the room, and it can also be used for behaviors. So, you know, when that tone of your voice changes, the kids know to get right. And it also goes along with nonverbal cues. When you walk by, they know, or when you shoot them that look, they know you're watching them and, you know, get back on task. Patrice?
I agree. You set the tone for the class and your voice. You don't want to be, I'm more so of a nurturing type of teacher. My voice usually does not really command respect just because of my voice. But I do have a voice where when I switch up, my students know, oh, she is not playing. She is very serious right now. And they adjust accordingly when they hear that voice. So I would and it's not a voice where you're yelling at the kids, because you can't yell. You can yell, but you start kind of like diminishing whatever control you do have when you start to yell, because they know now she's out of control or he's out of control. So you don't necessarily want to yell, but you just have a stern voice and they'll know.
So what's your next tip?
My next tip is going to be treat all students equally.
I will 100% agree with that. And you can I can say this. I see a lot of teachers, they give favoritism. Oh, they like this kid better. They're going to do this for this one. I try to treat everyone the same way. And also, when you don't do that, it builds up animosity.
Yes.
And those kids can have behaviors.
Yes. And it's just you want to be fair with all of your students, because they can pick up on it. Even I'm usually birthdays, we celebrate everybody's birthdays. We do all types of things together, the same consequences. But you do have some students who they touch your heart, and you just can't help. Like, you can help what you're doing, but people can see it, because sometimes I may have a student and my voice may be a little bit different, if my yes might be different. So I have to consciously know, like, okay, you need to say yes a certain way for all the students, because we're still human. And you have students, especially if you have a student who does everything you say. It's not often, but you have a student who may do 80% of what you say. They're always willing to help. So sometimes you may, but your other students should never feel like you have favorites.
Okay, so what's your next tip? Oh, that was your tip. Okay.
That's another thing.
All right.
Use your ears and listen as a teacher.
So my next tip is, don't get overly involved in your students' lives. And I'm going with this. Some of our students, depending where you are, they live some tough lives. They could be homeless. They can be abused at home. There could be food insecurity. And as teachers, yes, we want to help them. We want to listen to them. But you have to kind of remember, when you take that stuff home and you start, it'll start impacting your life. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that throughout the years with teachers. We have kids that are, going through things, and they start going through it with them. And then their mental health is now off. Mm-hmm. So, I am all for giving an ear, listening, helping where you can, but you have to have a limit to that, or else, you're taking on other people's problems.
I agree. I'm going to look out for my students to a certain degree. Once I can't, you want to make sure you have boundaries. You want to make sure, for several reasons, not just, for your mental, but also for ethics. Like, you have to make sure that you have some sort of boundary. You have to realize, yes, you want to save all of the students. But there are some students you can't, and you need to get help beyond what you can provide for them inside of your classroom. So I think that's very important. Believe me, like, Terrell does a lot for his kids beyond them just being his students. I do probably way too much also, but there has to be a boundary. And there are times I'm like, nope, we need to call your mama. Or nope, we need to go to the social worker, or I'll contact this, because there's things that I can't help with. And like he said, you're that's going to affect your life, and you don't want it to affect your life.
So I'm just going to add a little something to that. Like, I'm all for helping the students, but I do not want to step on parents' toes, because that can get you in some trouble.
Yep.
So if I'm, doing something for a kid or whatever, I'm going to call the parent up and say, hey, this is what's going on, and I want to do this. Mm-hmm. You also, for your job, have good communication with your parents.
Mm-hmm. And know your area. Yeah, definitely. Know your area. Know, who you're servicing. Definitely.
So what is your next tip?
My next tip is that as a teacher, I find it best being student-centered. So what I mean by student-centered is that I'm not trying to get my students to reach my level, like, from right off bat. Like, I'm not expecting them to already be here and I'm here. I'm more so going to meet my students at their level, and then gradually, I can kind of get them to where I want them to be. I find that doing that, it's a lot easier for the student. They start to respect you a little bit more, and I find it personally more enjoyable. I had a student got on my last nerve every single day, came to class so loud, super, super loud. And my first response or reaction was like, no, you need to stop. You need to sit down. And then I started, okay, you know what? If she's going to be loud, I'm not going to, I don't want to say insult or demean, but I'm not going to attack that. Like, I found other ways around. And y'all, guess what? By quarter 3, she was probably my quietest student. And then we just kind of worked a lot better together, where I met her where she was at. Okay, that's what she was used to. So I met her where she was. Through that time, I wasn't able to teach her anything because I was so concerned about her being so loud, and she's not exactly what I want a student to be. And I'm like, I can't teach her because she's just too loud. Once I started realizing, you know what? Let me not even attack that. Let me not even tackle that part. Let me tackle exactly what she needs. And as I did that, I was able to, see her growth, and she saw her own growth. So definitely try to be as student centered as possible.
I agree. So
He says he agrees because I talked too long.
so my last my last tip is remember your work hours. And I'll say this, and it goes back to the first thing I was saying or second thing. Um, your first year teaching, you're gonna put in some extra work, but just don't overdo it, because if you get rid of that work life balance, your life's gonna be horrible. And I have dated a couple of teachers in my past, and a lot of them are just working, 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 and it's like, how can you have a social life? How can you, date? How can you be married? How can you be a partner? Like in the summertime, you're a great person to be around, but those other 10 months of the year, you're horrible. Like everything's about your students. Oh, I'm overworked. Oh, the district's not giving me this. Oh, this or that. So, I practice when it's time for me to get off. I'm done working, unless it's something I want to do. Like if it's something like I'm really interested in, all right, I'll do it. But still, keep that in mind. The school will drain you. The school system will drain you, take everything they can from you, kick you out with no money in your pockets, even though they're not really putting that much in. Just a little rant. And Patrice, what's your tip?
We're trying to encourage new teachers, not push them away. Okay? So I agree for the most part with Terrell. And as far as like working your hours, like you want to make sure you're utilizing your time while you're in your school appropriately. So if you have planning, and most teachers have planning. So if you have planning, do your lesson plans during your planning, because guess what? You won't need to take that home, because you get a certain amount of time to lesson plan throughout the week. Use that time wisely. So that would go to on time management, because then you know what? You don't have to take anything home. You're good. And if you go back to, I think it was Terrell's, not find your teacher voice. What was it? Don't take on anything extra. You don't,
Well, especially your first year.
especially your first year. But because remember, if you get your first year up and running and you're good, you have your lesson plans. If you're staying within the same subject area for the most part, you're going to be teaching the same thing next year. So the battle is already won for year 2 if you do everything correctly year 1. So I think focus on the craft of teaching. Like he said, try not to take anything home. Sometimes it's not possible. Okay? But try not to take anything home with you that you don't need to.
All right. So, Patrice, can you give us your last tip?
My last tip is be willing to learn from your students too. Sometimes we go into the classroom and, we're the teacher, so we're expected to know everything. But be willing to learn from your students. Not saying that they're about to teach you a whole lesson, but if you have open ears, you can learn about them. And sometimes I've learned so many different tips and tricks from my students that honestly made being in the classroom a lot easier, just like paying attention to what they're saying or what they're doing. But be willing to learn from your students. They have something too that they can share. You're sharing with them. They have something too that they can share, whether it's cultural, anything that they have. Like you want to definitely be able to pull in from them. Like now we're doing a lot of different activities based on, honestly, I've learned so much from my students. And for that, like I'm very appreciative of them for being able to share with me. And I think you could learn so much from them a lot of times.
So I'm just gonna kind of like add a little something. You can't always be in charge. Sometimes you got to give up a little bit of the power. That will reduce some behaviors, and will also get you able to learn your students, what makes them tick, what they're interested in. It can't always be you, the sage on the stage. You got to give them a chance to shine.
I agree. And I didn't say one thing, but that was your last one. This is my last one. One more thing, and Terrell just made me realize, like this whole part made me realize, like be willing to learn from your students. learn them, because not all, what you need to know, one big thing, not all students are the same. Also, brush up on your disability knowledge, because some things were, like, I hear a lot of teachers or people sometimes like, oh, they're bad, they're just bad, not knowing that a disability is a real thing. Okay, and it's not just where, students, oh, they're not listening, they have a lot of other things going on. And so you need to know, I mentioned IEPs, like looking at their IEPs earlier, but you need to know your different students, and you don't want to be a trigger for your students. You may wonder why a student is behaving a certain way in the classroom every day at a certain time. You might be the trigger for the student, and you may not realize it. And so you need to learn your students, learn their history, especially if they have disabilities, because that way you'll be able to teach them a lot better.
So, and I guess I'll add one more thing. Your first period is going to be your most lazy period, and your last period is going to be your worst period. So,
Right.
So what you need to figure out is how to get the students the information they need for the last period in the least amount of time, and then say, hey, we do this, this, and this. I'll give you guys a little free time. Because let's be real, at the end of the day, the students are burned out, and they just don't want to learn. You don't want to be there at the end of the day, so they don't want to be there.
And it might be by the end of the day, they only give them a little bit of food at lunch.
Yep.
So they're hungry. They've been here all day, and they're probably still a little bit hungry, restless at this point. So you just don't know.
And then I skipped the first period of the day. You're coming into school tired. You need your cup of joe. Stop by your Dunkin' Donuts, whatever you're drinking. Most of those kids don't have that luxury. Mm-hmm. They're in here tired. Try to have some type of exercise to wake them up in the morning, or I'm trying to think the best way to put it, but figure out the best way to engage them and realize that they're going to be tired. They're getting up really early because you don't want to get up this early either.
I don't. So I do like morning mindfulness with them every single morning. We do the same thing every morning. We're going to get up, stretch a little bit. We're going to share who wants to share anything with me. We may do like a quick activity, like just to get their brains going. And
so me and Patrice have something very similar in the morning. And our classes are a little bit different. I stretch in the morning. We do some meditations, different couple things. Then we get into how our day was the day before. And what that helps me do is gauge how the students are feeling. All they need to say is like 2 or 3 words. Sometimes you'll figure out if they're having a good day, a bad day. Maybe it's not a good day to ask that student a question. And I do that a lot most mornings, just so I can gauge how to approach my day.
Yep.
So I think that's all the tips we have for new teachers. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to us. And if you're a teacher, you can check out the channel. We make a lot of cool things. We're going to have some teaching videos.
If you're a teacher, let us know below in the comments if you teach.
Yep. Peace.